Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel today. Super excited to talk about a show I finished recently. We're going to be heavy on Star Wars for a minute because major corporations are ruining streaming. So letting the Disney Plus Hulu go because they've just reinvented cable. But that's a rant for another day. So yeah, I've been working through Star Wars shows that I put off for a while because my subscription expiring means I need to finish them. So we're going to talk Mandalorian, and then probably a little bit from now, we'll talk about Andor. So Mandalorian season 3, I mean, the season kicks off with a episode called Apostate. So like, I'm all over that. Licensed marriage family therapist, specialty in religious trauma and sports performance, but that's not coming up, I don't think. So I didn't do a review for season 1 or season 2 because who has the time to go back and rewatch entire seasons? Mandalorian season 1 was phenomenal. Such a good viewing experience, really great story. One of the things as a Star Wars fan that's really weird space to kind of occupy is the thing that's always been the coolest thing about Star Wars is the universe. Like, long time ago, galaxy far, far away is endless story possibilities. And what's happened with Star Wars is like, let's tell the same story over and over and over again. Let's just focus on this one family within this incredible universe that we've built. So Mandalorian felt really like fresh and new when it came out because it was not a Skywalker story. And even though Baby Yoda was in it, that connection was like new and interesting. It wasn't like, here's a Jedi. It was like, here's a baby. He's not a Jedi. So like, it was just a breath of fresh air. Mandalorian started out as kind of like a Western, like it was just a space Western, which like works. It works. Like Cowboy Bebop back in the 90s anime, early 2000s. I don't know when Cowboy Bebop came out, but like, yeah, the space Western just works. Like, that genre is open to having a spaghetti Western type feel. And so Mandalorian's a bounty hunter. We're introduced to Mandalorian, and he meets Baby Yoda and decides not to turn him in for a bounty, but save him from the Empire. And it's great. Like, it's a cultural phenomenon, memes galore. Like, season 1 was really good. Season 2 was good, but turned into a lot more of the fan service and the synergy, and felt like corporate decisions making decisions to get views as opposed to anything else. So like, was it cool to see Luke Skywalker show up and take on the Dark Troopers? It was. Did that make the Mandalorian story about the Skywalkers? It did. And like, I don't know. Star Wars is inherently cool. Like, Boba Fett was my favorite character growing up, and in the original series, in the OG trilogy, Boba Fett says like 5 lines, and he's so cool. So Mandalorian tapped into some of that, and then it got in its own way, or Disney got in the way of good storytelling. Hard to say which is which. But season 2 was good, but not as good as season 1. It just gets too bollocksed up. And so season 3 is a bit of a mixed bag of both of those things. I think it got back to a little bit of like, let's get out of the Skywalker stuff and be our own thing, which is great. And that's the story that needs to be told. And also like getting way too bogged down in nitty gritty Star Wars lore. So, but yeah, let's talk about the mental health concepts and specifically some of the things around religious trauma. Din Djarin, our Mandalorian bounty hunter that we love so much, is kicked out of his religious groups. They're religious zealots. They're a sect of zealots, and Mandalore split and was taken over by the Empire and bombed to pieces by the Empire because the Mandalorians wouldn't stop fighting each other. And so season 3 is a lot about Bo-Katan, who was the leader of one sector at one point, led Mandalore, and she's a little bit of like the new age Mandalorians that can take off their helmets and show their faces and be functional. And Din Djarin is more of this concept around the old school, like I want to say orthodox, but that probably doesn't fit for made up religions. They're all made up though. So I guess we can say orthodox, like the more structured, rigid, not progressive. The old ways are the way we do things. So we do the traditions because the traditions matter. Um, so like it's weird and seeing, I don't know, Star Wars has an interesting take on like a lot of morality. It's a stupid space opera that doesn't do a good job of like communicating a message around heavy topics, but like it's cool. So mass appeal. I don't know. It's weird. Like the Jedi are religious zealots and weirdos. Like you can't have human connection, you can't love, you can't have children, no sex. Like it's a strange thing to be like, these are the heroes of the story. And on the flip side is like the bad guys, the Sith, who are also a weird religious zealot group. Like the good and bad of it is kind of strange. Having the chosen one, the Anakin, the Messiah figure of the story be a bad guy. Like Darth Vader is innately cool and the hero of the story. Come at me, Luke Skywalker fans. Luke doesn't do anything. Darth Vader beats the Emperor. That's the story. Um, so yeah, I mean, Star Wars has a lot of organized religion in it, and a lot of the problems of organized religion are apparent. And also, it doesn't like super comment on like, hey, maybe organized religion is the problem. So that like is definitely there. Where like an episode called Apostate, where like Din Djarin is dealing with getting kicked out of his religious sect because he took his helmet off, is really interesting. And I think there's a lot of depth and storytelling that could have happened there. And it was like, nah, let's just do like Mandalore stuff, which like the Mandalorian history in Star Wars is convoluted and complicated and like, I don't know, I guess open for really good storytelling, but like the way it was approached here just was like, you kind of have to know a lot of the background because you're a fan and you knew a lot about it for it to be maybe interesting. I don't know. It just wasn't interesting. That side of it wasn't interesting. So like I think there was an emotional depth and a reality about getting kicked out of a religion or being excommunicated or deconstructing or any of that they could have done and made interesting and a good story, and like they didn't. So I think a bit of a swing and a miss. I mean, cults get views. Like, how many shows are there about cults on a regular basis? How many podcasts are there about I survived a cult? There's multiple shows on Netflix around Waco and the Branch Davidian cult that was there. So like, it's weird that they were like, oh, let's talk about cults, and then be like, JK, we don't have anything to say. Please don't get mad at us. We want your money. Like, again, just kind of that corporate decision, I think, which is unfortunate because a good deconstruction or excommunication story is available. Midnight Mass, it's a great show about that. So I think they could have done a lot with it and commented on it, and they just kind of were like, that's not the message they were going for. The overarching theme, I think, of season 3 was moving on from like tradition for tradition's sake and like this concept of chosen family. So Din Djarin taking in Grogu, he gets renamed Din Grogu because he's seen as Din Djarin's son now, and the different Mandalorian sects getting together and setting aside their religious differences so that they could fight the Empire. Like this concept of family and what family is, and family doesn't need to be bloodlines and hierarchies and all these things, but family as a chosen entity was kind of the overarching theme, which is great. Like that's the reality. And I think that's the reality a lot of people deal with when they leave religion. Like this concept of like, maybe your family's not going to support you. The friends that you thought you had weren't friends for friendly reasons, but just because you had something in common. And so they're willing to be friends with you if you fit inside a nice, neat box, but otherwise not so much. So that's really like, those are real things. And this concept of chosen family, I think that story could have still been told if they would have done the whole like organized religion and its problems. But they didn't go there, and that's fine. It's fine. Uh, the chosen family stuff's really great. I have a brother who's adopted. So there's a concept that I grew up with that I'm very intimately familiar with and super comfortable with, like this idea of like my brother's the family member I've gotten along with the best for all my life. We've hardly ever fought. We didn't fight at all growing up as kids. which is rare. There's an 8-year age difference between us. So like this idea of family not necessarily being um, by blood is important, and it's something that I see a lot in therapy. Of like, oftentimes we have to set boundaries with our family of origin. The lottery odds of just getting a family that's like healthy just across the board is super rare. And so, you know, more than 1 in 4, over around 27, 28% of families in America have some estranged family member. So either you're not talking to people or they're not talking to you. Like that's pretty common. 1 in 4 is not a slim number. And it's probably higher than that, I would say, based on the way that those things get studied. So there's probably some underreporting that goes on. So I think it's really interesting and fascinating stuff that Mandalorian was trying to tell around chosen family. Like that's a good message. That's something that I think can be powerful and helpful. That family is who treats you like family. Ultimately, like family isn't necessarily blood relations, and oftentimes blood relation is who treats us most poorly. And so family being who treats you like family, like Din and Grogu and the Mandalorian have been father and son since the beginning of the show. Like that's the dynamic that has been there. It's been one of parental care and child adoration. And so that's the story they've been telling. And it was a little bit more explicit with like a formal ceremonial Mandalorian adoption. And I think that was nicely done. I think that's a powerful message. I think that's a good message to be out there, that coming together, chosen family is more important often than family by blood relation. And it's an interesting story, I think, intergenerationally, because Din Djarin was also adopted into the Mandalorian group. So he was not Mandalorian by blood. So yeah, I think that's good. I think that was good messaging. I think that was a good story. The way that like the religious sects, I really have to pronunciate that word, sects, sects. The religious zealot groups getting along was, I don't know, I'm going to say a little ham-fisted. Like it was, I don't know where that phrase comes from. I'm just running back in my head if that's like an offensive phrase, and I don't know that it's offensive. It was a little heavy-handed. It was too much. It was like, why can't we be friends? And like, we all like Bo-Katan. The armor at one point is like, she walks in both worlds so everyone can love her. Like, I don't know. It was weird, and I would say like unrealistic for how division among organized religion especially works. Like there have not been a ton of like people who have been like rebuilders. Like there have been a lot of reformers. There have been a lot of people who split off and went and made their own religion out of a parent religion, but like people who have unified it, pretty few and far between, and certainly not in the way that the show tried to show. So like maybe a message of like, let's all come together and like we're all Mandalorians, and if we work together we're better. And like that's true. Like together we stand, divided we fall. Like that's a line from The Wall by Pink Floyd. Like sure, like I'm on board for that. Like we're all human beings, so let's be kind to each other. Like yeah, that's a good message. I don't have notes on that. It's just like, I don't know, the pop music version of it. Like it's so generic as to be not particularly useful. Like it didn't really show how that can work. They just kind of made Bo-Katan be a special character and nobody questioned it. And like, that's what worked. There was like one scene on the ship. They were on Mandalore, and I'm not sure. I don't remember which episode it was in. They're on Mandalore, and like one of the Mandalorians who always wears their helmet is fighting one of the Mandalorians who takes their helmet off. And like Bo-Katan's like, wait, we have to let this play out. And like, do you? I don't know. I've been a coach. Like, we don't just let fighting happen on our team. That's not helpful. So I don't know. It was weird and tropey and like telling us the plot of the story instead of showing us the plot of the story. Like, there was nothing that Bo-Katan particularly did to unify them. So it's just kind of like a plot point, and to like move the story along of Mandalore, of like, now there's an army of us instead of just 20 of us. So like, fine. Some of the stuff about Navarro and Grief Karga is, are they planning to turn him into a villain at some point? Like, or he's a good guy, but like he's getting real into his his titles and his fancy robes, and I don't know. It's nice to have like Navarro as a recurring place within the Star Wars world, and now the Mandalorian has like a cabin that Grogu can eat frogs at. Like that's cool. I like that. That's fun, and I don't know where the story's gonna go. It's just interesting, like for where the Mandalorian started the show, not the character. Um, I think there were so many places that they could take it and go with it, and it just has really gotten basic. Some of the tie-ins with Book of Boba Fett were poorly done. Like the best episodes of Book of Boba Fett were just episodes of Mandalorian because the Mandalorian was the main character of those episodes. They took a very cool character in Boba Fett and made him so much less cool by giving him his own show, and just didn't really lead to anything. It didn't end up mattering. Same with Obi-Wan Kenobi, like some cool scenery, and like love to see Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor back in those roles, but like there's no stakes. Like get out of the Skywalker story, like tell other stories. You have this whole big universe, and like the rebellion and the resistance, and like it's just the same story over and over again. We're not retelling it. Like we're not even making it interesting in the way we're retelling it. So it's unfortunate, and the things that I think were bad about the prequel series and the sequel series just keep repeating themselves because they're going over the same story over and over and over again, trying to get something new or nuanced out of it, and there's nothing there anymore. So it's unfortunate to kind of see the Mandalorian get bogged down in some of that. It would be great to have a Star Wars show that is unique and not beholden to canon for sure. Like the Star Wars universe has a lot of information in it, and some of the stuff around like Rebels felt great and unique for a while, and then got back into the Skywalker stuff. Ahsoka's going to be bogged down by the Skywalker stuff, so it would just be nice to have like some of the Old Republic stuff, and like you can do the fan service because there are people who have played the Old Republic games and read the novels and are super into it, and who are going to get behind it. And also, you can tell a new, interesting story with it. You could tell a story that hasn't been in a video game before. I think some of the Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order was like fun. Like people like the world. We like lightsabers and fighting stormtroopers and exploring different worlds and star travel and all that stuff. Like it's such a cool playground to have characters and growth and development in, that then to like just keep going back into it, I think has diminishing returns, especially when you're not taking any risks with your storytelling. You're not telling a compelling story. You're not trying to do something interesting. Like, yeah, it's cool to see Cad Bane on the big screen. Like, I was super stoked for that as a Star Wars nerd who knows who Cad Bane is. And like, that's cool. And also, not a particularly interesting story. Like there's nothing behind it. It's just these cool moments linked together. There's no like compelling reason to go back to these things. As I said, I loved Mandalorian season 1 and had like no compelling interest to go back and rewatch season 1. So yeah, I think like some interesting stuff. I think there's still there stuff that they could do if they stayed away from the Skywalker stuff. That would be interesting. Like Grogu's training as a Mandalorian could be interesting. What's a force sensitive Mandalorian look like? Like I think that could be interesting. The one like training montage was very Hollywood, and like Grogu loses to another little Mandalorian kid who's in training and loses the second time and then wins 3 in a row. Like, okay, like there's no growth or effort or development. Like that's not, I don't know. Star Wars is beholden to like the chosen one trope, or like the story of somebody who's just innately more powerful than everyone. This is a common trope in anime too, where it's just like this character is better than everyone, and isn't it fun to watch this cool character? But I think a lot of those stories kind of end up, they just don't have a lot of like reason to go back to it. You've seen the cool stuff, and that's what it is. And then I don't know. So I'd love to see Star Wars come out of that. I'm a fan of the universe. Darth Vader's been like a favorite character of mine for a long time. I tend to, especially growing up, have rooted for the bad guys. So Darth Vader's such a cool bad guy. And then like Luke's this like whiny, terrible supposed protagonist who you don't end up liking. The growth arc of Vader from Anakin, whiny Anakin, to Darth Vader is much cooler than the whiny Luke Skywalker into still kind of whiny Luke Skywalker. Shout out to Mark Hamill, who's great, just not it's I don't know, the character. So yeah, Mandalorian season 3, like fun. I think inoffensive in a lot of ways. I just think there's a lot more interesting stories that could have been told that weren't, for probably corporate reasons. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like pop music. Like it's designed to be inoffensive and fun for a mass number of people. It's not telling a particularly interesting story, which is a bit of a bummer because I think there are interesting stories in that universe with those characters that could get told and hasn't hit yet. So we'll see. It definitely it didn't tie up every loose end, but like Star Wars, it's a huge universe, so it's not going to. It's open for a new season, but there's not like a clear cut next season on Mandalorian. Here's what they need to wrap up. So it'll be curious. I think like super popular characters, the Mandalorian's very popular. You never see his face, so do you need Pedro Pascal to be him forever? Like I know that will offend people, but like probably not. Obviously, his voice is pretty like iconic at this point, but and Grogu is super popular. So from like a pessimist side of things, like of course it's Disney. They're going to milk it for all it's worth, which is why they did a series of Boba Fett. It's why they did a story of Obi-Wan. Those weren't good stories that needed to be told. Those were just cash grabs, which is unfortunate. It's what happened. I think they're doing a new series with Rey, which like I don't know. We tried that. It failed. Because of Disney's decisions behind the scenes, not because there wasn't a story that could have been told that was interesting. So yeah, hopefully, I don't know. I like Star Wars. I think there's a lot of cool stuff there, and when you have the galaxy to play with, like tell more than one family's story. I can get. I'm not doing a review of Star Wars as a whole, just the Mandalorian. Um, there's a lot of family dynamics about an intergenerational trauma in Star Wars. Which I don't include the sequel series in, although intergenerational trauma is present without. So again, like I think Star Wars can be a good basis and can have some good real world application and can be a fun way in a fantasy world to talk about heavy topics. They just keep not doing that. Which George Lucas sort of started with, and then like got too caught up in his like midichlorian sci-fi tropes. But the original concept was cool. So we'll see. I would say watch it. Like if you like Star Wars, or even if you just like The Mandalorian and you don't know all the Star Wars stuff and the fan service behind it, like that's the tightrope they've been walking of like how do we make this nerdy enough for the hardcore Star Wars fans without overwhelming people who are unfamiliar? Probably shouldn't have done the Mandalorian War. But it's yeah, so there's just lacking some depth, I think, for somebody a fan like me who has a lot of the background knowledge. Was best friends with the guy who knew all the different alien types in Star Wars. So that's kind of the background I'm coming at it with, and I can tell you the characters from Knights of the Old Republic and some of that stuff. So I think it's interesting. I think just like even moving away from the Force, like it can be a thing that exists, but like isn't super widespread. I don't know. Or go the other way and like go way back in the history and do like Jedi versus Sith all out war where there's hundreds of Jedi and hundreds of Sith and just give us 85 lightsaber battles and cool stuff with special effects. Like, I don't know, go one way or the other. I think kind of like trying to tell a grounded story in a galaxy far, far away, like, and then have lightsabers and the Force and the Skywalkers be everywhere all the time forever. I don't know. That well has run dry. So that's my review of season 3. If you like Star Wars or you've liked The Mandalorian, watch it. It's good. It's inoffensive, fun. It's not a sludge, like it's not a drag to get through the episodes and the season. I watched it pretty quick without binging it because it was interesting and fun, and these are characters that we care about. And yet, it didn't have a lot to say, and it didn't do a whole lot, which is a bit of a bummer because I think there's stuff there. So I don't know, like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Like if you really care about the characters, it's probably closer to a 7. If you don't, it's probably closer to a 6. Like I think it's inoffensive fun. It's Star Wars. It's cool. You're not going to be like angry that you watched it, and also it's not life changing. There's not a lot to learn from it. It's pop music. So Mandalorian season 3. Check back. I got like a couple things. I got some things. I'm doing a bunch of idioms today. was trying to explain to my 5-year-old recently what an idiom is, and it's just making me hyper aware of how much I use idioms. But got some different plates spinning, different. What's the thing with in the fire? I don't know. Now I'm trying to blank on my idioms because they called attention to it. I got some cool stuff coming up. I'm going to do a review of Andor, which is a Star Wars series that I can say I liked a lot more. Spoiler alert. And still working on a Watchmen series. I got distracted by a bunch of different things. So I got that coming up, and then interspersed with some song reviews. And I've been doing a 3 worst therapists of all time. So you can check that out. So yeah, just doing some stuff. Content creation isn't hard, but like it's weird to come up with more content. I don't want to do a review of everything I watch or read because that takes away some of the enjoyment. It feels like work. But I love that some people are dropping down in comments and commenting stuff. So leave a comment, talk about something. My specialties specifically are like relationships. And so that's everywhere. Mental health is everywhere. Religious trauma, specialty mind, sports performance, neurodivergence too. So I love when people interact with me and text me, or clients tell me they want to see a video or review or something. Multiple clients requested my wife as a guest on the podcast, so I did that. So drop down in the comments. Like, I'm interactive and also love people's ideas. I want to talk about things that are interesting to people. So if you got a show or a movie or a song you'd like to see review, drop it in the comments. Do the other YouTube stuff if you feel so inclined to like and subscribe. I'm terrible at self-promo, so do those things if you want. And check back here for more mental health pop culture content. Peace out, everybody.